Hey there. I wanted to talk about something that's kind of unpleasant to talk about, but something that's been on my mind for most of my life. And I think the older I get, the longer I'm around, the more I explore issues of religion, spirituality, faith, communities. I see it over and over again. And there's been a few things that I've run across in the last couple of days that have kind of brought it back to mind, even though it hardly ever leaves my mind anyway for more than a day or two. But anyway, the issue is concerning criticism, judgment, stone throwing, uh, some of which is just really cruel and vicious on one side, and at the very least, it's very small minded and short sighted on the other side. Now, I wish I could say that these kinds of things seem to happen only between people who are on completely polar opposites of different religious backgrounds. For example, let's say an atheist and a fundamentalist Christian, or let's say a fundamentalist Muslim versus a uh, uh, a very strong mainline Hindu. Okay, those are just two examples of maybe you know uh, people coming from completely different directions that have such a different worldview and such a different like religious or scriptural reference that okay, it's a little bit obvious that those people are on completely different pages. That's one thing. I'm not saying that's a great situation, but still, it's something different if you're talking about an atheist versus a fundamentalist Christian, or uh, a fundamentalist Muslim versus a mainline Hindu. I lived in India for a long time, so I saw these Muslim versus Hindu things all the time. And I think we're all very familiar with fundamentalist or evangelical Christians versus those who are atheist or at least very agnostic or whatever. But okay, that's part of the discussion, but I think more baffling to me is when I continually run across situations where people within a specific religious tradition or religious box are uh, clawing the eyes out of somebody else within that same box simply because their theology, their ideology does not exactly line up like this, grid upon grid. Um, YouTube has been a fantastic thing, hasn't it? I mean, it's very easy to just go down rabbit trails that can last for hours or days or weeks or months when you get on a particular topic. Um, and of course, I am from a Christian background. I grew up in the Presbyterian Church, Presbyterian USA. My church that I am still a member of here switched over to Eco, which is a little bit more of a modern, uh, little more progressive branch of Presbyterianism. But I'll say, in the spectrum of denominational Christianity, my brand of Presbyterianism is still rather conservative. So that's where I'm coming from. However, I have spent time in the non-denominational megachurch world. I have spent time in the parachurch organization world. I've spent time in the campus ministry. Used to be called Campus Crusade for Christ. Now it's called Cru. I have spent time in Youth with a Mission, which is also a multi-denominational parachurch mission organization. Um, I was also involved with vineyard churches back in the 1990s. So what I'm saying is my background kind of spans the spectrum. And I have also read quite a bit about atheism. I'm very fascinated by people who come from a Christian background and then decide to chuck it all. I even have personal friends who, to me it amounts to throwing the baby out with the bathwater. People who have run up against a faith crisis in their life and then have chosen to uh, basically chuck it completely. And I think that's what has got me on this today is because just in the last couple of days I've run across a couple of YouTube channels by former Christians who have deconverted, in their own words, from Christianity to atheism. And these are people, one or two in particular, who were actually pastors. Okay, back to what originally I was talking about that I would like to discuss, and that is, I think it is of dire importance that people listen to each other. And whether you are on polar extremes or whether you're sort of in the same stream, but you have diverted a little bit to the right and somebody else has diverted a little bit to the left, people need to take a deep breath and try to listen to each other and try to empathize and identify with other people, with what other people are learning and struggling through. And so often, what I see online, whether it's YouTube or other sources, I see people who are in their very narrow lane of whatever religion. Even if you're an atheist, you can be super narrow-minded. Has anybody ever noticed that? Even if you're a person who claims to be very tolerant, you can be very narrow-minded. I have seen that very often. I've seen it with Westerners who convert to Buddhism, who run around talking about how open-minded they are, and yet as soon as somebody comes along and challenges anything that they have bought into, they go berserk. So the point is, you don't have to be a fundamentalist Christian. You don't have to be into radical Islam. You don't have to be a hardline Hindu to be narrow-minded. Does anybody agree with me on that? I've seen it over and over again. I've seen, people who are into the New Age or who are into sort of the build your own faith model, who can, out of one side of their mouth, they can talk about how everyone has a right to their opinion and everyone should be able to promote or believe what they want to believe until it's somebody that they disagree with, and all of a sudden they get vehement. So I don't like to do long videos, and again, a lot of what I've talked about in these first few videos, which hardly anybody has seen so far anyway. I'm just sort of trying to start building this channel, but I'm just introducing some topics that I would like to talk more about in the future, and this is one that really has stirred me up the last few days. And I guess the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is, okay, all of us who are interested in religious topics, spiritual, faith-based topics and conversations, I think we would be much better off if we would learn to drop our own personal agenda, and I'm talking to myself here, and try to understand where people are coming from and recognize the fact that there are different pieces of the puzzle and different parts to the whole. And I'll finish with this. Again, being from the Christian background, 1 Corinthians chapter 12 is very important. It talks about one body, many parts. And it's where we get that concept of the body of Christ. And it's always been so interesting to me that we have this beautiful picture. We have this beautiful analogy or story in the New Testament given to us by the Apostle Paul that talks about one body, many parts. I'm paraphrasing here, but he says things to the extent of, okay, what if you're an eyeball? Do you completely understand what the function of the pinky toe is? If you're the spleen, do you have any clue what the eardrum is doing? Okay, one body, many parts means that we all have certain gifts, inclinations, functions, skills, perceptions, and I believe those are God-given, and I believe that they are all part of a much, much bigger purpose. So why, if you're the spleen or the eyeball, do you spend all your time talking about what an idiot the kneecap or the pinky toe is? Or if you are the elbow, why do you spend so much time talking about how pointless the large intestine or the lung is? I mean, you don't even have a clue what they do. So anyway, that's my point. Is I think we need to learn to respect different parts of the body. And again, I'm coming from the Christian perspective right here, but I think that applies on a bigger picture as well, as far as where people are in their experience, in their stage of awakening, or their stage of coming to awareness or understanding of something beyond this material world. There's going to be a lot of trip ups along the way. Everybody struggles with different questions, rationale, logic, emotion. We're all built differently. We all have different questions. We all have different things that can potentially derail us. And it's not one size fits all. Okay, this is getting way longer than I like videos to be, but thank you very much. We'll do more later.